Hi friends, we are going to make a pin cushion. This is my assignment for my 9th grade class to hand sew a pin cushion. So the first thing you're going to start out with is 2 pieces of fabric. I've cut these together. We're going to actually cut it smaller, but they're right against each other because we want to cut them the same size and shape, but they do need to be opposites. So you leave them how you got it at the store with the wrong sides together as you cut your shape. So I'm going to just do about a 4-inch rectangle, or 4-inch square. And I'm just going to eyeball it. It's really not a science for what we are doing right now. And so there's 4 inches there. And then I'm going to cut 4 inches here so that it's a nice square. All right, so here's my square and I'm ready to start sewing. So when we sew, we always sew right sides together so that it is sewn inside out. So we can turn it right side out and the pretty edges are on the outside and then the ugly things that we have created are on the inside. And so we are going to put the right sides together. This gray side is the side that's meant to be seen and the white side's the side that's meant to be on the inside. So we're gonna put the right sides together. We're gonna line them up the best that we can, the right sides together. So you have the right sides on both sides. Now, when I sew something that I know that I'm gonna turn right side out, I like to make you have to leave an opening so that you can turn it right side out. And I like to leave that opening on a side. I don't like to do it in the corner. If you do it in the corner, you can't clip your corner and it doesn't fold in as well and make a nice neat corner. So I like to leave my opening on the side right here. So we're gonna start here, sew all the way around and end here on our pin cushion. So the first thing that I've done is I've threaded a needle. I'm using this embroidery floss because it's what I have in the classroom, but it's really thick, so you'll be able to see the stitches that I'm doing really, really well. I would not recommend doing this kind of thing with embroidery floss. It's kind of a pain and it's not what you need. You can just use regular thread. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna tie a knot. I've evened the ends of the thread and then we're gonna tie a knot. You can just do it the easy way where you just, I actually think this is harder. It's harder for me because I'm used to doing it my way, and I'll show you how in just a second. Where you just take both of the pieces and tie them in a knot together at the same time. Okay, so that is a way to do a knot. The problem with this is that it's a very tiny, tiny knot, and so you'll probably have to sew or tie 2 or 3 knots on top of each other so that it's big enough that it won't pull through the fabric. The way that I like to tie a knot, and I'm sure there's 100 ways out there, but the way that I like to tie a knot is I wrap it around my finger one time like that, and usually there's not a knot here because I'm tying a knot, and then I roll it down my finger. Can you see how it kind of intertwines with itself as you roll it down your finger like that? So I roll it down my finger, then I pinch it right above where the roll is, and then I pull that to the bottom, and that makes a nice knot at the bottom. It's really not that pretty of a knot, but this is gonna be on the inside of our project and no one will ever see it. So you tie a knot at the bottom of your thread. Okay, so like I said, we are gonna start, I think we're gonna go this way. So we're gonna start here and end here. So I'm gonna poke my needle through. We have to have a seam allowance right here. You don't want to sew all the way on the edge because the fabric will kind of break and then your seam will open up. So we don't want to sew right on the edge like that. So we're going to give it a seam allowance. About of a 1/2 inch seam allowance is perfect. So I'm going to come up here 1/2 inch away from the edge, and this is where I'm leaving my opening. And then I'm gonna pull my thread all the way through till the knot, my big ugly triple knot there, is touching the back of the fabric. Okay, so now to start, we're gonna do 2 stitches. The first stitch we're gonna do is a running stitch, and that gets us started to be able to do our back stitch. So a running stitch is when you go down, up, down, up, down, up, and you just go straight in a line, and you just go down, up, down, up, down, up. And a back stitch is when you go back a little bit and then forward and then back and forward and back and forward. It gives them a much stronger seam And that's why we're doing that with the pincushion, because we stuff it really full of stuffing and we want it to be a nice strong seam around the edge. Okay, so our running stitch, we've come up here, we're gonna go down and up as the beginning of our running stitch. We wanna keep it as even away from the edge as we can, and we wanna keep our stitches as even as possible. That I came up here, and then I went here, and then I came up there. And so those are about the same distances. We want them to stay, the stitch to stay even. We don't want to go do long stitches and short stitches and tiny stitches and big stitches. You don't want to do tons of big stitches because the edge of the fabric will separate when we turn it right side out, and you'll have these like weird loops and openings on the edge. So you have to find that in between the tiny machine stitch tininess and the big long stitch, because I'm lazy, kind of stitch. An in-between stitch that's not too long, not too short. Okay, so this is the running stitch. Up here, down, up. So I went down, up, and I'm gonna pull that through. And the running stitch, I would just continue going down, up right there. And then you can see half of the stitches on the top and half of the stitches on the bottom. That's a running stitch. Now that we've done one running stitch, one down up of running stitch, we're gonna switch to the back stitch. And we are gonna go back. And usually with the running stitch, we would just go here and keep going, but we're gonna go back to where we went down last time. And we are going to go down and then up, one stitch down. Can you see where that is? So we're going, there we are. We are going down where we went down last time, and then we are coming up one stitch down, okay? And then I'm gonna pull my thread through. Now, if you pull the thread too tight, it gathers your fabric up. You don't want that. You want it to be nice and flat and even all the way across. So I actually almost with every stitch pull on it like this so that it is flat with my fabric. All right, here we go, another back stitch. We're gonna go down where we were and then up one stitch down, okay? We're just gonna repeat that over and over and over. Except for we've gotten to a corner now and we've got to go around this corner. So I'm gonna do another back stitch, down and up in the corner. See how it's gathered and tight right there? We don't want that. We want to make sure that this thread lays nice and evenly. You don't wanna have it you don't wanna have it bunched up in there. All right, so now I'm gonna go back to my back stitch, but then I'm gonna come up right here on the corner as well, where I did last time, so that we make sure that we have that corner nice and secure. All right, we got a little back stitch on that corner. We're gonna flatten it out. Now we're gonna turn the corner. We're gonna turn the corner, make sure everything is flat and how we want it to be. And we are going to, it's like starting again. So we're going to do a running stitch where we go, I'm gonna go up a little bit higher because I don't want, I want that 1/2 inch seam allowance. So where we go down, oh wait, that's where we started. Okay, so we're gonna go down, up for a running stitch, okay? Down, up. Do you see where we're going? Down, up. So that's our running stitch, like we're started over again. And now we go back to the back stitch. Here we go, down where we went down last time and up one stitch down. You see where that is? Down where we went down last time and up one stitch down. Okay, then we'll pull that in, make sure our thread is laying nice and flat. Sometimes you'll get a loop in there because one thread has pulled through more than the other thread, and you can make sure that those are nice and even. Sometimes you can even loosen them if you feel like you've pulled it too tight, to make sure that it's a nice even stitch. Okay, so now we're gonna do it again. We're just gonna go all the way around the whole thing, down where we started, up with the next. Okay, so I've gotten to the point where my thread is too short to continue sewing. If you let it get really, really short, you won't be able to tie a knot. You gotta have at least 2 needle lengths to be able to tie a good knot right here. So this is how you tie a knot. You get a little bit of chunk of your fabric and you come through, bring it through, and then you put your needle through the loop. Then you pull on your thread, and that puts the knot right up against the edge of the fabric. You're gonna do that 2 or 3 times in the same spot. I'm only gonna do it twice because my thread is so thick. But then that makes a nice, even, tight knot right there next to the edge of your fabric. Then we're gonna just clip it. You don't want to get it too close to the knot, but this is going to be on the inside, so no one will ever see it. So you'll clip it and then you will start again in the exact same spot. I've noticed as I'm sewing that my rectangle is a little bit off. So my goal right now is to make a line that's parallel to this line so that my overall rectangle will actually end up as a rectangle. It was supposed to be a square, but that's okay. We're going to improvise, and I'm going to follow this line right here so that I make sure that it is a rectangle. Okay, we're going to start sewing in that same spot where we ended sewing. I've tied a knot on the end of my thread, and I put more thread on my needle. So we're going to start here right where we ended. And then we're gonna just, like we started again at the beginning. So we're just going to do a down, up, running stitch. So I'm 1 stitch down, down, up for the running stitch. Flatten that out, and then continue on with that back stitch. Down, up with the back stitch. Okay, we're gonna stop right here and leave a little opening. This is a little bit on the small side. It's gonna be hard to turn it right side out, but we can do it. All right, so then you get a little bit of the fabric and you run it through the loop and you tie that knot there 2 or 3 times, and then you have your opening right here to turn it right side out. Okay, I've made a square on my fabric and I've left a little tiny opening. It's gonna be a little hard to turn this out because my opening is so little, but it's okay. We're gonna clip the corners. Don't clip the thread, but clip that corner so that we don't have bunching fabric in these corners. We want it to be, we don't want it to have a big bump in that corner. So we are going to clip the corners. I'm actually gonna trim this so that it's nice and even, 1/2 inch all the way down, because I did sew straight lines, but we got off a little bit at somewhere. So we're just gonna pretend like I didn't get off. There we go. There's our little rectangle. Okay, and then we have an opening right here, and we are going to turn it right side out. Okay, I turned it right side out, and this is my cute little rectangle square-ish thing happening here. Here's the opening right here. Notice how it's folded in just as if I would have sewn it. We want that folded in nicely on the edge. And the smaller that you have this opening, the less sewing you have to do for your invisible stitch. So I don't like leaving the hole really big, but if you get it too small, then it's really hard to turn it right side out. And so I didn't leave a very big hole so that I didn't have to sew a lot of invisible stitch. Okay, so now we're just gonna stuff this full of polyfill. This is just a cotton. There are lots of things, if you're doing this at home, there are lots of things that you can fill a pincushion with. I would just do an internet search if you don't have something like the inside of a pillow. And do an internet search and say, what should I fill my pincushion with? Because you could find an old stuffed animal and gut the old stuffed animal and shove it in there, and then it would work. There are lots and lots of different things that you can fill it with. You could shred fabric and put fabric in there. Anyway, tons of things. Do a search if you don't have any polyfill, or a pillow or a stuffed animal that you can harvest for parts. All right, so we are going to fill this up. Okay, so I've stuffed it pretty stiff. You want it to be pretty full so that when you put your pin in it, the pin will stay standing up. If it's kind of empty, first of all, it pokes through really easy to the other side, but you want it pretty full. Okay, so I've got it pretty full. I'm gonna push it down and then even it back out after I'm done. You want this top edge nice and flat. You want that very crisp, this fold right there. You want that very crisp. If you want to iron it before you stuff it, that would be a good idea, but you don't have to. I have a good fold there, so I'm gonna just go with it. All right, so you need some thread again. We're gonna do an invisible stitch on this. We're gonna tie the knot on the end. Okay, now we're gonna start by putting our needle into the pillow and coming out so that that knot ends up on the inside of the pillow and nobody will see it. So what we do is there's that little fold right here that it folds down the side. We're gonna get our needle up underneath that fold and come up on the edge of this fold, okay? Does that make sense? And I'm right here, right at the beginning, and it's actually a little bit before the beginning, and it's on this folded edge that it was sewn. So I'm gonna bring up my needle through there so that the knot will go on the inside underside. And actually, as a right-handed person, I like to sew going that direction when it comes to an invisible stitch. This is also called a ladder stitch and a slip stitch. It has a few other names because people have been using this for billions of years. Okay, so I came up on this top side right here. So there's two sides. We have the top side of the fabric and the bottom side of the fabric. I came up through this top side, so I'm gonna go down through the bottom side and then up on the fold. So see how there's the fold, goes all the way across here. I want to keep my needle on that fold. I don't want to put my needle down here at all. I don't want it on the inside of the fold. I want to keep it right there on the edge of that fold. So I put my needle directly across from where I came up, and then I go up on the fabric. And then we just keep doing that over and over and over. So where I am at right here, I go directly across, down, up on the fold. Then pull my thread. Directly across, down, up on the fold. Directly across, down, up on the fold. A couple more times and we'll be done. Directly across, down, up on the fold. Keep going until you have closed this entire opening. Now, the fact that you have gone directly across, that's why they call it a ladder stitch, because you have this thread that goes straight across all the way down. I like to kind of pull it to hide it as much as I can. You should be using thread that will be camouflaged with your fabric. So I usually would have used gray thread with this, but I'm using blue thread because I want you to see all the way around. I want you to be able to see my stitches better as I do this. Okay, so I've closed my opening. I actually have a little bit of an opening left right there. I'm gonna do another across and then up the fold. Okay, so I've closed my opening. It's time to do a knot. Again, with the knot, we are going to go get a little bit of fabric, pull the thread, and then we're going to put our needle through the loop. And then when you pull that, it puts the knot right up against the edge of your fabric. Your knot's not going to be so big. When you do this with thread, it's much, much smaller because I'm doing it with embroidery floss. It's huge, but I want you to be able to see it. Okay, so we do it at least twice through the loop. Pull it so that that knot is right there. Okay, now we are going to hide. So if we clip this right here, right now, there's gonna have this little fuzzy edge sticking off, and we don't want that. We wanna hide the tail of our thread. So we're gonna go down into the pillow, right next to this knot that we just finished. We're gonna go down into the pillow, and we're gonna come out anywhere. I just came out anywhere. It does not matter where you come out. Down into the pillow, come out anywhere. Pull that so that it's nice underneath there. And I promise your knots should be much smaller than mine. And so that's your finished look. So you have this thread coming out here. You're going to just clip it on the edge of the pillow. There's where it comes out, but then you just squeeze your pillow, massage it a little bit, and it gets sucked back in so that you can't see that thread that's in there, and you can't see a little fuzzy edge sitting here. So that is your invisible stitch right there. Your goal is to make it look the same and that you can't tell where your opening was. So here's my pillow, my little pincushion pillow. So now we're gonna put a button in the center of this to kind of make it look like a couch cushion, because they're kind of cute. All right, so what you wanna do is you wanna find the very center and poke your needle through the very center and try and make it come up through the other side. See, I'm kind of low, so I'm gonna redirect it and eyeball the center there. From the center of the back to the center of the front. And I've tied a knot on the end of my thread. So I'm gonna go all the way down like that. Now I'm gonna go back up right next to that, and then right next to this one, and I'm going to now thread it through a button. Doing it this way hides my little bit of a knot tail here and my knot itself, underneath the button. So we'll then go through one of the holes of the button. We'll go back down through the hole right next to that knot. Make sure we come out the other side. If you wanted to put a second button on this side, you absolutely could. Pull it really tight and then it'll look like a cushion like that. And then you'll tie your knot underneath the button. I think I'm just gonna do one though. Okay, so then I'm gonna pull it like that. And then we're gonna kind of pull that thread nice and tight so that it looks like a cushion. Be careful with your thread. It should be doubled the whole time. You don't wanna break it and then have to start over. So then we're gonna try and go back up through the buttonhole. Yes, it's a little tricky. I wanna make sure that I stay in the same spot on the bottom, but then make it through the buttonhole, okay? I'm gonna pull on this side again to make sure that it's as tight as I can get it before I start pulling this through again, because it's gonna stay nice and tight. But I want to have it tight right now. So then I push it through, don't poke yourself. Try and get it through the same, so that it comes out at the same area so you don't end up with like really wide open area for those stitches. Back up through the other side. Let's do one more. With your, doing this with just regular thread, I can't find it. There it is. Doing this with just regular thread, you'll probably want to do it 5 or 6 times because you're putting a lot of pressure on it. Okay, so with my super thick thread, we're going to be done right now. We're going to come out from underneath this button, and then we're going to tie a knot underneath it.